I love you, Jeremy.
I'd just like to extend a very warm welcome from the Labour Party in Leeds to Jeremy Corbyn. Thank you very, very much for making the time. It's going to be a tough election, but as you see, we've got the volunteers and helpers to make it work.
Spirit.
Exactly. Very welcome to Garforth.
David, thank you very much. Thank you all for being here today. We're on the road. We're doing lots of campaign stops all over the country. And thank you very much for doing sign language so that everybody is included. That is the Labour way. We include everybody. Thank you very much indeed. I want you to put your best behind David in this election campaign. David spent his life campaigning on housing and so many other issues. We live in a country where every night a number of people, a very large number of people, end up sleeping on the streets, hoping for somewhere to live, begging in order to get money for a night shelter in so many parts of this country. It's not necessary, it's morally wrong that as a society we accept the idea that people are homeless. We will deal with homelessness by building council houses. We're very clear about that because it cannot be right that in modern Britain so many people are insecure in their housing in the private rented sector, often overcrowded in the council sector because there are not enough places to go around, and those that want to buy cannot raise the deposit because they're spending so much on rent in the private sector, and so they're locked out of the whole thing. And I'm sure there are many in this audience who will feel very strongly about this. Many adult children never get to leave home, which is difficult for the adult children and even more difficult for the parents. You all know what I'm talking about, don't you? Yes. And so it is about housing for all that we're very keen to deal with, and I'm looking forward to the election of David in order to bring that knowledge, that expertise and that determination to Parliament to represent this area. Today we've been in Leeds College this morning talking to a lot of students, talking to them about their future in further education, their future in the FE sector. This government took away the education maintenance allowance, underfunded so many of our colleges, taken away so many opportunities for so many young people. If you deny young people the chance to learn at any stage in their lives, they end up achieving much less than they could. We as a society achieve less than we could. So let's start at the beginning. If you give every child a good nursery place, like we were doing with Sure Start centres under the Labour government in the past, then those children achieve more in school. If you then underfund the primary school, so the parents are asked to pay and collections at the school gate to help subsidise the pay of the teachers and the teaching assistants, that school is then obsessed with raising money in order to survive when its objective is to educate and give the children in those schools the imagination they need. So we will ensure that all schools are properly funded, and we will not be asking the parents to chip in because the government is not prepared to pay the money they do. I talked of homelessness. I also talk of the number of children that go to school hungry in the morning. I was at the head teachers conference in Telford a couple of weeks ago on May Day. And there was a head teacher with tears in his eyes telling me how he manipulated the lunch queue because he knew that the very poorest children were not going to get an evening meal. So he made sure they got double helpings of food. Well done him. What a decent, kind man. But he should not be put in that position and that difficult decisions that he has to make. And so what we've said is that we will make sure every child in primary school gets a school lunch, a free school lunch, eaten together, so that every child is entitled to that lunch, they get it together, and what a great memory for the rest of their lives. We all grew up having lunch together, chatting about things, because that's what education is about. But it's also about imagination. So we're going to introduce a pupil premium for the arts so that every child can learn a musical instrument. Because children have imagination. I was just asked what my favourite poets were, and it took too long, the answer. There were so many of them. But children have imagination. And if they develop music, they're good at maths. If they're good at maths, they're often also very good at music. All these things interrelate. Let's not put everybody in boxes. And so it's about how we treat our children and our society that we're keen on getting a message over today. And so those that go through secondary school and want to go on to college, we will bring back the educational maintenance allowance. We will ensure also that there's access to free courses for adult learners as well. Because during our lives, we change jobs, we develop new interests and ideas, we want to develop new skills. That means a public investment in order to make sure the college is there to do it. It was the post-war Labour government that brought in the idea of education from cradle to grave. We're going to have a national education service that ensures that education is valued at all stages of your life and all opportunities of your life. This is the right thing to do, but it also is founded in sound economic sense. Do you know, in Germany, they've invested far more in education and in manufacturing industry than we have. In France, they've done the same. Most European countries have done the same. Our productivity levels are lower than those countries. Why? Is that because people don't work hard here? No. It's because the equipment and the machinery they're using is too often out of date. The investment hasn't taken place. And so we will make sure our students are not indebted by wanting to learn. We will also make sure our industry is supported through a national investment bank, fairly spread through every region of the country, so there isn't an imbalance of London and the South East. That's the Labour way of doing things. Because this election is about a choice. This country is leaving the European Union, that is clear. Are we going to leave and become a tax haven fit only for those on the Sunday Times rich list who will invest in off-plan luxury housing in order to leave it empty and make a profit out of it? Or are we going to be a Labour government and the Labour strategy of an investment-led economy, good jobs, good quality jobs, and a living wage for all? Or are we going to have the Tory way of the growing gap between the richest and the poorest, underinvestment in the poorest parts of the country, forget about post-industrial Britain, they just walk by on the other side? Well, I want to lead a Labour government that doesn't walk by on the other side to those that want to get on in life but are held back by poverty, held back by bad pay, held back by underfunded public services. So this election is about those choices. This is an important constituency. This is a very important candidate because he's going to win for Labour and help us to get a Labour majority. But to win, we've got to do two things. Before the 22nd of May, make sure that every single person who can vote in this election is registered to vote. 2.4 million, mainly young people, were not registered as of 2 weeks ago. Since then, around 1 million people have registered to vote, but that still means there's nearly 1.5 million people eligible to vote who are not going to be able to vote unless they register. So please, please, please get their names on the register so that they can exercise their democratic rights. People laid down their lives for the right to vote. Democracy won us so much. It won us education, it won us housing, it won us the National Health Service, it won us the idea of a society that cares for all. Let's use that democracy to defeat the party of the super rich and the wealthy and elect a Labour government that will be there for the many, not the few. I want to encourage you all to do your utmost to get that message out, day in, day out, for the next 30 days, to win, to elect David to Parliament, but above all, make David part of that Labour majority in Parliament, to deal with health, with education, with housing, with investment, with all the hopes and dreams that we want for our young people, and the decency and inclusion in retirement we want for older people. Go for it. Thank you very much.